Is it still possible to raise money with the PowerPoint?
It was an amazing deal. I'll tell you the terms and you're probably going to laugh.
What I learned over the years is that if you have an emotional connection with the problem that we are solving and with the mission, it builds way more resilience, and that's something that is needed.
And I think as investors today, like, we see a lot of founders solving very obvious problems without having an advantage in terms of like, oh, I know this better than anyone else. And then the question becomes, so why are you going to win?
So making an execution machine at some point starts to be like the biggest challenge. And that execution machine goes also in the direction of making less dependent on the CEO.
Este episódio é patrocinado pela FrameDrop.ai. A FrameDrop transforma os vossos vídeos longos em clipes virais utilizando AI. Experimentem agora, copiem o link deste episódio e colhem no link que está na descrição ou a aparecer aqui. É gratuito.
So hello everybody, thank you for coming. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Diogo, this is Álvaro. We host a podcast on the Portuguese startup ecosystem where we try to go beyond investment rounds, exits, millions, billions and stuff like that, and we try to focus on the founders and who they are and what their stories are. So having this in mind, we have Cristina and André with us. Thank you for coming. And I think Cristina needs no introduction. She's the founder of Talkdesk, one of the Portuguese unicorns. She is now a general partner at Indico. So my first question for you is, what do people do not know about you?
What do people don't know about me? Maybe I'm going to share some fun facts. So I was born in a place where there's no one my age, middle of nowhere, in a little town next to Fátima. So very neutral between Lisbon and Porto, like neutral territory. I have 35 direct cousins,
35.
which is super cool. So I have a huge, huge family. After Talkdesk, I co-founded an AI and machine learning company before AI was cool that I sold. That was on purpose under the radar, because I think there's a lot of noise in the startup ecosystem and it's very easy to get into the fireworks. But the real job of a founder is to work on product, build something customers want, and like the rest should be a side effect of that. I'm pregnant, so cooking a baby here. And I guess that's a good
Great answer.
Some interesting aspects.
The other guest we have is André, which is a co-founder of Barkyn, a subscription service for pet food and other services like vets. You've tried also several other things before. You've had a career before being a founder. And I'll ask you the same question. What do people not know about you, André?
Okay, so I have 23 direct cousins. There's a pattern here. I have also a big family. I co-founded other companies before Barkyn. I lived in Germany. I had 2 dogs. I always was in love with dogs. That was my hobby. For me, the story of Barkyn it sounds a cliche, but it's really connecting the dots, because when I was 16, I wanted to be a veterinary. Then I wanted to study more like management and tech. I have 3 kids, so I also have a high growth family. And that's it. So I think that I'm trying to do something special with my family legacy, but also on the startup world.
I think what you said touches a point which is related to our next question, which is, we often talk about focus and why do people try to solve certain problems instead of others. So my question, I think this applies to both of you, is what's the relation between you and the problems that your startup solve? Why those problems are not any other?
That's a great question. Today, with what I learned over the years is that if you have an emotional connection with the problem that we are solving and with the mission, it builds way more resilience, and that's something that is needed. You'll find a lot of obstacle drawbacks, a lot of things to overcome, a lot of trial and error. If you're emotionally connected to what you're solving, and if you're passionate about what you're solving, things become easier. You become kind of unstoppable towards your mission. And that's what we're doing, and what I feel with Barkyn. I have like very driven discipline, because I really care about the mission that I'm solving, and the issue that I'm solving, and that goes in direction of maybe one of the advices I would give to like a new entrepreneur would be to choose something that you're really passionate about. It's like a second cliche, but it is a cliche because it's true. If you're feeling the issue, you also know about like all the nuances and the hidden issues of the market and your consumer. You know what they value, in which degree they value. So I think that's very important. I don't think it's a pre-requirement to build a startup, but it adds a lot of value down the road.
What was the gap that you identified to start building Barkyn?
Yeah, so the third cliche is that I try to solve my own issue, and that's really truth. I had my dog like for very long, Misty, that was very picky with the food. She didn't like going to the vet. That was a very anxious experience for us. So from the very beginning, the issue that we wanted to solve is pet care is broken. Like it's a very messy experience, and it's not like tailored at all. So I wanted to solve the care and the food for my dog, not serving out of a standard solution in the market. That was the very first value proposition of Barkyn, that still remains kind of untouched today, in like a bit broader now, but the same, like solving pet care in one single place, one single fee, one single plan and protocol.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you have a very different path, Cristina. You didn't had a professional career before your startup, at least the one that succeeded.
Being an entrepreneur is a career, you know. But I think like my angle is probably different, and I think there's different ways. First of all, I think like when André says like you need to find energy and resilience somewhere, like it's like it doesn't matter where it comes from. I think in my case, so I founded Talkdesk after university. But for 1 year, I was exploring different ideas and trying to come up with something that would work.
You had a notebook with 30 ideas that you would
exactly.
try.
Like you did a good homework. And I think at the end of the day, what I became passionate about was like solving a problem that creates impact in customers, and you see customers like really loving what you're building. I think for Talkdesk, basically, we spotted an opportunity, because lots of things were moving to the cloud and call centers were not in the cloud. So there was a little bit of an alignment between a revolution that was going on, and it was like the cloud's transition. And like we explore that, and then we just became obsessed about solving that. And then there's like a flywheel of, if it's working, you get excited. But at the end of the day, I think what keeps me going is like the people around me and the teams and the energy you get from putting a lot of work into something as a team and seeing results and get that going. Now, I think the world and the entrepreneurial ecosystem is way more competitive. So Cleverly was basically, I knew customer service very well. I'm going to solve a problem in this industry. Okay, I'm going to apply a new technology, but like I have domain expertise. And I think as investors today, like we see a lot of founders solving very obvious problems without having an advantage in terms of like, oh, I know this better than anyone else. And then the question becomes, so why are you going to win? Again, I think the world is much more competitive today compared to 10 or 15 years ago.
So you think that would have worked 15 years ago, probably?
What
This trying to solve very specific problems, but without domain knowledge.
Like, I think it works. It still works. Like, you need to be passionate. Like, you need to. I think the most important thing in a founder's journey is no one wakes up and does everything right. Everyone will do mistakes. the faster you fix your mistakes, the closer you are to getting onto something. So I think it's, if you have domain expertise, you're going to make less mistakes. You're going to be able to move quickly. You're not going to do things like the learning journey is less painful. But as long as you can like iterate quickly and fix whatever mistakes you realize you do, fine. I think today it's also very common that, I mean, like, you create a slide deck, you get out, you try to pitch someone, you're the best thing on earth, you try to raise some money, and you make it public very early in the journey. And then maybe you have a little bit of a challenge to tell people, oh, this was all wrong.
Yeah.
And it took me 3 months to realize. So dealing with this, with reality, I think founders need to be very good at dealing with reality and not being in denial, which 10 years ago, no one would give a shit about you building a company. So like you just had to be realistic with yourself because there was a high chance no one knew about what you were doing.
But what do you think contributes to that right now? Because that, I also feel what you're saying, which is it's difficult for people right now to admit that their company has failed or something like that. But why is it different now than it was before? What's contributing to that?
Admitting that it was a failure?
Yeah.
I think it's the same. I think just now it's way easier to wake up in the morning and say, I'm building this company, and get out there and like try to fundraise very early without you having the right things aligned, understanding like which product you want to build, what's the problem you want to solve. So I think it's like you get into a certain competition and then it becomes public, and then some people really have a hard time like facing reality when they realize they have to like change course.
Okay, so people probably commit earlier now than they did before, publicly.
Yeah, exactly. And André, I mean, like, you had a company that didn't work out, right?
Yeah, let's talk about the failures. You tried several times before. What were the companies that you tried to build before, and why?
Yeah,
did they fail?
So I built 2 other companies before Barkyn. One was called Foodsai, like
it sounds similar.
13 years ago. But out of that company, I met very interesting guys that were also living Airbnb by that time in Germany, and we co-founded another company called Wunder, that by then was a mobility peer-to-peer service. Now it's like way bigger behind BMW and alikes. Yeah, so I had both experiences of trying and not succeeding, trying and then succeeding well, and now I'm in the process of trying of becoming something way bigger.
Okay, but the first one, what was the mission of the first one, the Foodsai?
That was a food marketplace, some like a platform where you could build or sell your own food, your own specialties to your own city. So something like a peer-to-peer cook platform.
Okay, why did it fail?
We were very naive in the first place. Like the idea was not good. The model was not well structured. The timing was very bad because by then it was by regulation not allowed to do that. So all those caveats count to the startup success. Sometimes it's just the timing, but that's also part of the research that I would advise people to do beforehand. The idea, how to position, if there's space in the market, if the market is growing well. Today, I would spend a lot of time before starting a new idea and investing on that research time.
Okay. And I believe this is the same issue for you, or at least in one of your tries, you found out that there were like 30 companies doing the same as your one of the first ideas.
So I think there's different lessons, right? Like first, we try to solve a problem. The first thing was like very focused on the Portuguese markets.
Mm-hmm. That's
we realized, okay, like hard to scale, not going to work. We made some money, enough for us to keep going. Then we tried to go big in a space we didn't know anything about. Terrible idea, because like there's a high chance other people like are doing it already. Then we said, okay, we need to like do something we understand, and we focused on a small idea that would make some money, but we were always looking for the big thing. again, I think what we did well was like we did these 3 things in a year. And I'm not saying, I mean, like, there's a tough balance between being resilient and know when to move on. And I think there's a lot of reasons why companies fail, of course, running out of money, like co-founders not getting along. But sometimes founders kill the companies because it really takes a lot of resilience. And I think it's a hard balance. It's like, we can wake up every morning and say, I give up. It's the easiest thing to do. So it's a little bit of an art to figure out, okay, what's the right next step?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And going back to you, Andre. So what was the moment when what was the trigger for quitting your job and starting Barkyn at 31 and with a kid, like going all in something so risky?
First of all, I didn't go all in really suddenly. We started testing the model and the first economics and the first customers rolling in. And once we get the conviction, okay, there's something here and numbers make sense and people value this, then we went all in. So I think it's a conviction that comes from research, a lot of instinct, which is something a bit undervalued in business because you should be very structured, but for quick decisions you need to be also follow your instinct, because your instinct is also like AI on the lessons that you built before. But the conviction about the problem, it's a big problem. No one is solving it. No one is realizing it needs to be solved, and people is valuing it. And we're getting a lot of good feedback from customers. And that was the trigger, getting, I think, more that qualitative feedback from consumers, great reviews, people repeating at high pace. And okay, we're going to invest on this. And then we started fundraising right from the start.
Yeah, but what did you have at that time? So how did you get customer feedback? What were they using? Did you have a product already?
Yeah, we started with a very simple website, quote unquote warehouse, which was a garage. And we started selling for some customers, and it was, I remember that the first order was like very high failure. It was not a great experience. We needed to iterate fast. But it was like doing the first Facebook ads, having like a very hacky website and just testing very manually. We replied to all of the customers manually, one by one, doing customer support one by one with a vet that we knew by that time, calling customers one by one and finding out what they were valuing it.
At the time, you didn't make your own dog food?
No. Yeah, by that time, again, the Eki way we were validating the value proposition, not necessarily our food. The value proposition is having in one place like tailored foods and vet. And so to validate the idea, we just bought from other brands and we resold to the consumer. Fast forward to today, we have like a big investment on our portfolio of food, our own supplements, and a good portfolio of our own products.
Okay. Yeah, you started in a startup competition, or at least Talkdesk started in a startup competition to win a computer. You thought it would be a nice prize. How was the aftermath of the competition? Was that a Portuguese competition, and then you went to the United States?
No, it was the other way around. We were in Portugal. Okay. We participated in a startup competition in the US. It was an online thing. We won, and then there was like a conference where we were invited to present, like 5 days before the actual conference, because they assumed like all entrepreneurs were in the US. But still, like, we flew. And we did what we had to do, which was like show up and behave as a proper startup at a time. Like, we didn't even have a logo, T-shirts, or a proper website, which we built in like 2 days. But I think the most important thing is to validate early. So from time to time, I see entrepreneurs that are just very protective of their ideas, or even are in the cave and don't like to talk about them because they believe someone will steal them. Startups are all about execution. And the earlier you start validating your idea, the faster you're going to move. And I think like what André did was like what should be done. That's why he's here, which is what are your bottlenecks? What are you validating? Like just try to kill assumptions one at a time. Okay, like do people like this value prop? Yes or no? Like I'm gonna validate that. Build a website, ship things myself, see what happens, see what I need to improve, and go from there. Like I don't want to generalize, but sometimes you don't need super advanced technology or a custom platform or lots of engineers to make that happen. Of course, there are exceptions, especially in like deep tech type companies that involve AI or hardware or things like that. It's a little different. But also, again, like at Indico, when the founding team doesn't have the skills that are necessary to validate and get to the first MVP, that's usually like a huge red flag. I mean, like if someone comes to me and says, hey, here is my slide deck, I'm gonna like make this company big, give me money, I'm gonna hire people to build it. Well, that's not a very strong pitch.
But I feel like that strategy has worked before in time. There was a time where people could raise money with.
Still, you can do that today,
Yeah,
but I think there's a lower chance it works. And if someone that has the expertise that will be able to move faster than you is solving the exact same problem, that other company will have an advantage, right? Like it's the domain expertise. Like if you have someone, if you have the skills in your founding team to solve the problem, like first you have an emotional connection, you have like a vested interest in making it work. It's very different than hiring someone to do the job.
Sure. Yeah.
How did you validate your assumptions?
Like talk to people, like put product out there, like put it in front of customers.
You had an MVP at the time?
Yeah. Like the competition, we built the MVP to the competition and then we just kept going. And then we had to iterate a million things. The concept, like, I think we got the concept right and it was like the same as you, like the value prop is still the same. Then it's execution and tweaking the details and what's the experience like? What's the flow like? How am I going to find customers? How am I going to convert customers? How do I make sure they have a good experience? How do I retain them? So that's all execution. I think like both for Talkdesk, Cleverly, there was a lot of iteration on the product, but the value prop was there from day one. Sometimes it changes, but...
Mm-hmm. You raised money really early, like maybe 1 year after the competition.
But we had an MVP already.
Yeah.
Like, and lots of customers, when we raised money, we're already testing with like 3 to 5 customers, like small.
With revenue?
Not revenue. That was not important at the time. But we had like a waiting list of like 700 people.
So those 3 to 5 customers were not paying? They were using and not paying at the time.
I don't remember people, right? but no, like we were not
that was not the
focus
optimizing for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But now you were like 22 or 23 years old at the time. Now that you are an investor, was that deal your first fundraising a good deal? Now that you can look back and...
Look, it was an amazing deal. I'll tell you the terms and you're probably going to laugh, but that was like a bunch of years ago. I'm not going to tell how many because then you make the math and like, you know how old I am. But it was standard accelerator terms.
Mm-hmm.
We raised 100K, no, 50K for 5%. 50 or 100K for 5%. People, I'm pregnant, so my memory is like shit these days. For 5%, which was very standard accelerator terms. Today, you think like, what the hell? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But we went to the US. We raised from the right people. And most of the times, that's better than raising at the best possible terms. We went to the US. Like, without that step, we would not be where we are today. We built a very strong network there. That opened doors to raise from other like well-known investors in the Valley. So it was the best deal. Like it was an amazing deal. Economically, you can say, well, maybe that like you are not very smart. And the Talkdesk fundraising story was very privileged because, I mean, things were going well. We then raised a little bit more money, like 400K total. And then we were in the cave for like 3 years, basically almost, building product, validating things, and really making sure we were on the right track. At some point, we had more money in the bank than the fundraising round. And then we said, we need help to scale because we are a little stuck in these engineers building product, how do we get to the next level? And then the round after was to open a proper office in the US and build sales and marketing teams. After that, because then things were going very well, we raised at a very high valuation. Super cool. Like that's when you think, okay, cool. But then you need to justify the numbers. Mm-hmm. Because if you raise at a super high valuation, the investors that will come after will say, well, yeah, but you need to justify the valuation of the previous round and still like keep growing in order for me to pay a higher price. So then we were for 3 years without raising. It worked for us. Mm-hmm. But if we had run out of money, we would be in a very tough situation. So I think sometimes we need to understand what's feasible, market standards, focus on having the right investors versus optimizing for valuation. Sometimes founders do that for a lot of reasons, but that's not the right variable. It will bite you if you optimize for that.
Wise words.
You might be lucky. We were lucky sometimes, but I think like we got to the right numbers after.
Yeah, and I think Cristina touched a great point, which is the importance of having the right people as investors. And we know that Indico has invested in Barkyn. Exactly. Were they the right people?
That's a difficult question now, but yeah, I can only praise Indico.
Yeah. So
the question here is, what do you think that?
Let me put it like that. Like I think like we invested in second round, right? Like, I think since then we've always kept backing Barkyn. That's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Like your investors are your partners, and they should always be there to keep supporting you. That's also something you should pay attention to.
Okay, but what were the main drivers for the decision of investing in Barkyn? And I think
so. We tried not to get into details, and now you're. So I mean, for sure, the founding team. I think like André has been like as he's telling you, like focusing on the right things in terms of validation and so on. Honestly, I think in Portugal, the group of entrepreneurs that are product centric. Like can get out there, keep building, super resilient. André is one of those. And I'm going to shut up not to.
Yeah. And from your point of view, what do you think you were doing right to get the trust of Indico?
First of all, getting to Cristina's words, I think I totally agree that we should optimize for the right people, including the right investors, and not necessarily the right terms and the maximum valuation.
It's the smart money, right?
Exactly. I think the best symptom and that happens with Indico is if you have an issue, you feel very comfortable calling them and speaking with them about an issue that you have, something that you need to structure, something that you need to prepare or plan for the future. I think that's a good validation of having the right investors, having that space of safety and comfort to discuss any topic of the company. What are we doing right? I think, honestly, we are very, very product driven. I think that is our main strength, in the sense that we focus totally on the customer, and this is very tangible on a daily basis of our company. I used to say to the team that even my opinion as a CEO is statistically irrelevant, so it doesn't count, at least facing customer feedback and data. And that is something that we are very obsessed with, customer feedback and data. And we are a very data-driven company, like taking decisions and getting hints of the behavior of the customer, what they value, what creates a retention uplift in higher or lower degree, what's the sentiment of our customers, of new rollouts, new features, new product decisions. And I think that's what I believe that we are. That's what I believe that we are building, and that will compound in the future to a way bigger company. Yeah, I think that's that product DNA.
Okay, nice. And you said something that I'd like to highlight, which is that you started the first try that you made was in Portugal, was with the Portuguese market, and you said it was a small market, and then you started in the US. Talkdesk was a US first, at least was you had headquarters there, and Barkyn, I believe it's not. You sell for the European market, right? Do you think this is, I would not say a mistake, but do you think that going to the US is like a no-brainer for any company?
It's different, right? Like it's very different type of companies.
But
maybe for software.
Why for Talkdesk? It
I mean,
made
software
sense
SaaS, like it's very different. But if your opportunity is to tackle a problem, like globally, and it's a software platform that has no barriers to scale, like Barkyn is very different from that perspective. Like you need to prove it in a competitive market. And that's usually US, UK, maybe Germany. Like when a company in the software space comes to us and you've only proved your product in Portugal and Spain, let's put it like that, that's not enough for me to understand. Like if you're really making something that's different. So that's basically it.
Okay. I think
but we were young, we were just trying to do what the best tech companies were doing. It was not that was very strategic.
The playbook was written.
Exactly. The playbook was written, like the US accelerators were the right way to start and go big. So we were following that. Like I remember the first time I went to San Francisco and I landed, there was a guy on the plane who was Portuguese. And then it's super advanced ecosystem, but buying metro tickets is like a terrible experience. So he helped us with that. And I asked him, like, what do you do? And he says, I'm an entrepreneur. And I remember my reaction of like feeling like, okay, I never met someone in Portugal that told me I am an entrepreneur. No one knows what that is. I guess the Portuguese ones came here. So it was very different ecosystem. Like our friends had no idea what we were doing. Like they thought it was crazy. Like what happened to these crazy people trying to build a company?
Rejecting job offers out of university.
Of course, because I mean, like that's how you build a company, and no one understood that. So the market was in a very different stages compared to today.
And picking up on Alvaro's question, I think when you have a company that requires logistics and operations such as Barkyn does, I think it's straight out impossible to do it globally at the same time, right?
At least at this level of investment, yeah. But that's the thesis that you want to prove, that you can build region by region and then you can have fuel to expand to a broader geography.
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting to keep going on the differences between your two companies or your two ways of working. And one thing that at least has already happened for you, Cristina, is that you moved out of the company. So the company at least does not require you to have a day-to-day work, which has not happened yet in Barkyn, but we hear a lot that one of the main objectives of a CEO should be to make the company the least dependent on himself as possible. So is that something that you see in a near future? Are you working towards that?
That's a good question. So I think that a startup First of all, I remember many times the doctor of my kids that when my first kid was born said, okay, the only bad news that I have is that from now on, there's no life without worries. And that's the same with a startup. So there are different phases in the beginning. Everyone, even the CEO, needs to push every day, just pushing and making everything happen. Then strategy becomes more important to be really well positioned, structured, and hitting the right spots in the market and the right value proposition. Even copywriting and all that takes a big importance, at least at a consumer business. Then the third phase, I would say, is structure and planning and making planning system work by itself, like a machine of execution that you need to put in place. I think that we are still now in that phase of planning, articulating every single planning ritual, doing weekly, monthly, quarterly reviews, very well structured, and giving the power to people with these principles, this vision, these strategic drivers to just do it, execute on it. So making an execution machine at some point starts to be like the biggest challenge. And that execution machine goes also in the direction of making less dependent on the CEO, even on like the C-level. So the C-level is focused on the strategy, culture, the future, innovation, fueling people with the right principles and mindset. Yeah, so I think that we are now in that phase of decoupling and kind of making the machine work very well and like as a very oiled system.
Is it hard to hand off a company like your baby?
Okay, so I think this conversation like gives me the opportunity to talk about like two or three different things that I believe are very important. First of all, like a founder, like I'm not my company. Like I absolutely love like the companies I built, but founders need to like get a little bit of a distance and say like this is not my personality. I think the second thing is like the job of the founder, and what I did very well at Talkdesk was like every 6 months I would replace myself. First you code, then you talk to customers, then you need to like figure out how to onboard like lots of people all at the same time. Then your job becomes recruiting. Like it's every 6 months, like there's a big new problem you need to focus on, and you basically need to hire very good people to do like parts of your job. And I think like maybe André can talk a little bit about hiring leadership, because it's hard for a founder to like hire super senior people first, because that's very hard, but delegate some key aspects to the business so you can focus on more strategic things. But that fundamentally changes businesses and company, and it's what allows you to like usually unlock next level. And André has been on that journey. Maybe you can comment on that a little.
Do you have anything to add to this topic?
Exactly. I experienced firsthand the power of hiring the right people and the right.
And first the wrong people, which
first the wrong people, but it's part of the journey as well. That's also learning to hire the wrong ones and then hire and seeing the effect of hiring the right ones, with like very impact and tangible impact in a company. And we did this in the last year. We hired several very senior people with great track record in startups and scaling up startups. And we see that there's a new world of delegation and like safety of delegating everything, and even themselves building the system itself, including the culture. Because at some point it's totally impossible for you to control how everyone in the company execute or think or what's the mindset. And for example, culture takes a lot of time, and it's not just because you write the values or that you set that this should be our culture that you'll create that culture. It's really culture building, and then you need to define the right principles, so everyone have the same framework of mindset. I used to say that culture for me is how people behave when they don't know what to do, when they face like something surprising, an obstacle or something new to solve, how they react. And for example, at Barkyn, we know that, okay, we plan in an analytical way, we push it today to do today what, and not tomorrow what can be solved today. Everyone acts like an owner about the problem or a part of the problem as if it was their own company. And that is also very satisfying to see culture in action when there's something surprising and you see, okay, this is working. Like people is really pushing and acting and like planning very well. So it pays its dividends, and it's super crucial also in that journey of delegating. Because then the machine, part of the machine, you can define processes and frameworks and all that. But I will only cover a way to execute. There will always be corner cases, blind spots, and then you depend on people, totally on people. And depending on people is how they behave, which equals culture.
You had very different careers. I'm going to compare Barkyn to Cleverly because I would say those are the ones that you've built after having a first try, let's say. What do you think are the pros and cons of having like a more corporate career before founding a startup and learn by doing as a founder and then being a second time founder?
I don't know any other way.
Yeah, but
so I sold.
You know, a lot of entrepreneurs now, and
no, but like, so I sold Cleverly to Zendesk, and I'm still the head of AI for Zendesk, which is a super interesting thing to do. But I always tell my boss, look, you're my first boss. Like, it only works because you let me do what I want. Like the day that changes, like I'm out of here because I think like as a startup founder, you learn to be accountable. Like spot problems, try to solve them. So I mean, like, and you can do that in corporates and startups. Like, I don't think there's a huge difference. But I think you need to be in an environment to do that. You need to be a very good team player. That's like in all. And again, I think like it's like I don't know how to compare.
But like you start at the top when you build a startup, even if it's a low top, you start at the top. And that's probably more similar to the next company that you will build, and not the experience of starting from the bottom and then going up.
But if you are a CEO that has never done that job before, like regardless of your title, you need to go order coffee, first of all. No one is going to be there to order coffee for you. And then, like, you need to elevate other people around you. Like, you need to be very humble. Like, you need to work a lot. Like, you're the person representing the company because you're the most senior person. But that doesn't give you superpowers or like an army of people or like some magic way of like the to have the problem solved. And I think like in the hiring aspect, especially when you go out and try to hire like VPs and like super senior people, like you have the hope they're going to like be perfect and solve everything. And I think it's very unlikely that you're going to find someone that's better than you at the job because you're obsessed, you've been there, you have more context, you know better, and then you hire this VP. Like the first VP of sales we hired at Talkdesk was very well recommended by our investors, like amazing reputation in Silicon Valley, and it was a disaster because like we knew way more than the guy. Like I don't think he was doing a good job, but like it was hard for him and for us. And we tried to give him a little bit of space, but then things were not really working. Like there was a little bit of a mismatch of expectations, and you would get into deals and sell more than the guy. Like this is wrong. So but you need to learn how to find the right people and the balance between I'm delegating to this person, but I'm also keep paying attention. So yeah, it's a hard balance. It's not going to work at all times. Like for many iterations, like even 1, 2, 3 years ago, I would call Tiago and he's like, we still didn't figure out sales. Like damn, like how hard can this be? And it's a journey.
What are the pros of working in a corporate before starting a startup?
Again, I don't think there's a rule to be having some success as an entrepreneur. For me, I think it had a big impact and made a big difference. I worked before, especially at consulting. It gave me a lot of structure, thinking, rational planning, and all that. So it made a huge difference in our path and our success for sure. So I wouldn't exchange for other paths, but Cristina is here to prove that that's not necessarily.
But sometimes I'm like, I wish I was a consultant and I could build amazing slides. And
It would be easier to raise money.
you can't change the path, right? But there's advantages and there's different ways.
Is it still possible to raise money with the PowerPoint and not being in a deep tech or like hardware?
Depends if it's André's slides. Like I was always very jealous of like, the beautiful Barkyn slides. I think it depends on team, pretty much. Like how far are you in the validation? But like just wake up, do a PowerPoint, and try to raise money. Like there's a lower chance that's going to work. Like you need to be very special. Usually that has to do with founders.
But do you have to have revenue or other metrics like users?
Experience, very good reputation, track record of building something unique, or have another business somehow and trying to turn like a different business into a product that's scalable, although that's usually harder than founders think. So it's possible, but it's very unique cases.
Was it easier when you started?
I mean, I don't think so. I think like the startup ecosystem was early days, early stages. You would not, like the YC had this like mantra, which is build something people want, get me an MVP. You need to have at least 2 or 3 customers. And that was the rule. So everyone was optimizing for that. And that would be the way for you to validate. I think that's still very valid. And if I were to build another company, I would do that first.
Okay. So same playbook.
Same playbook. Don't skip steps. Validate. Put things in front of customers. Talk about it. Because then you're just putting yourself in a tough spot.
I think we have some questions.
Investors are not stupid.
We have some questions here from people who listen to us and they wrote beforehand. I don't know if you're going to answer one of them, but I'll just make the first one and let the Álvaro
I have
do
no problem with the question.
other one, which is difficult. So I'm going to read it because I don't want to put words in people's mouths. So it is, how do you see bootstrap startups? Do you think that after the hype of 2021 and now with AI, RVC's more rational position and demanding more initial traction, even in early stage?
We don't demand different levels of traction. But again, I think the world is more competitive. So, like, we need to be able to understand, like, it's harder, the bar is higher. Not because investors put it there, but because the world has, like, raised the bar a little bit. So, more competition, all the obvious ideas, like, there's a high chance they are solved. If we talk about AI, the bar is, like, lower, right? But also, if you build a wrapper on top of ChatGPT, good luck. Come talk to me, like, and like, happy to discuss. So it's harder. And the right way for you to prove me that you're onto something is to get real customers and have some level of validation.
Okay. And what about bootstrap companies? Do you have a strong opinion about that, or?
It depends on the definition of bootstrap.
Okay.
I think like we got to MVP and the first customers in all cases I was involved in without raising. André also first job was validate. And I think like bootstrap, like, I mean, it depends like how far you want to go. Like you want to get to $1 million in ARR bootstrapping, fine. But I think it doesn't matter. Like just focus on validating. If you have resources to do that, awesome. If you need investors, get a team in place that can get to MVP and first customers and then talk to investors.
Okay. That's a good question. We have another one here, which is for André, which is, what were your biggest failures, particularly in Barkyn? Something that you completely regret doing.
First, maybe not investing very early on hiring, on a very good hiring process, and especially filtered by culture in the first place and not skills, and not trying to hire the best rock star in terms of skills, but also the right rock star in terms of culture, who can be a culture advocate internally. And we had bad experiences in the past, like casting mistakes for several times, of course, in different teams. Then maybe I would say not planning well here and there product rollouts, because it comes a time where we have many thousands of customers, and if that's not well planned, it goes wrong. You cannot do that anymore as a small startup. So we did some mistakes of execution in the past about product and rolling out a new feature that went not good. Yeah, I think I don't remember like a big failure, but there's failures every day.
That's a good sign. That's
yeah.
a good
No, but I mean, like, one thing that Cristina said before that I totally relate with, and I think it's like a super important trait, and our job is not to be attached with the current solution exactly, and be humble and confident at the same time. Almost, I heard even a VC say before that the right spot is a balance between even arrogance, a positive arrogance, like I will solve this, with being humble. And I think that we always did that well. So not being attached to the solution, being very attached with the problem, which means that if you want, to solve this problem, to make this work and to make this grow, we have to invest more in telemedicine and not on food, we'll do it.
Okay.
So having that spirit of very open, that's also another trait of culture, and that we need to cultivate internally, to face the truth very brutally with customer feedback and data, and having like a very vigilant mindset. But so there's no big failure, but there's small failures every week, like something that didn't work, then we iterate, we try again, we try a variant of that with a different ones. It didn't work, we try again. And that's the learning mindset that you need to build in a company that will compound in the future, because at some point you are missing, and you are in the right route at some point, and then there's potentially an inflection point. So there's a lot of small failures in startups, and then we need to collect the learnings and iterate fast.
Okay, I have one more question before the last one. I think that we heard a lot during the episodes that we are recording is focus. It's really hard to focus when you are on an early stage startup. You want to do everything and you want to test everything. And I think that there's a threat right now, which is adding AI to everything. And my question is that how do you resist this threat? Is there investment pressure on adding AI? And maybe from a different point of view, how do you identify good AI companies from GPT wrappers?
Solving a problem? If yes, then write application. If not, move on. And Andres is like a very cool story with AI.
Yeah. So the right way to face it is to also build a future, and that's what we're doing. Even though the bigger value proposition of Barkyn is selling food with a vet, we're now rolling out this month a new app that enlarges our value proposition, like with full health with AI. So basically what we did was we collected all the available research on the market that has data points connected to pet longevity. We trained models that can recognize data points on image. And so we built this app that our customers will have for free in the service, and we'll also test as a standalone product, which is like just requires you to scan your dog in different angles, and we can assess a lot of health scores, and by then we can prescribe the right protocol, tailored food, tailored supplements, and all that. So the right way to avoid a threat is also to build a future. And that's again goes to the same direction, not being attached to always the same literal solution, but thinking how we can best solve the customer pain. And the customer pain in our case is that, again, pet care is broken, but also is broken because medicine in our case is very legacy, working for like 40 years the same. And I can only know that my dog has a problem already at the clinic. So we are kind of inverting this by doing preventive medicine and assessing the right health scores, again, with AI.
Okay. So we're jumping to the last question, which is something we always do in our episodes, the episodes of our podcast. And we're going to ask both of you for an advice that you wish had been given to you when you started, but was not.
Basically, an advice for these young people here that I believe most of them want to be an entrepreneur and are starting their careers.
I think I already mentioned, but like I'm gonna mention two things. Sorry, which is start validating as soon as you can. An idea only becomes real when you start talking about it with other people, with customers. Don't be shy with your friends. They're going to be the ones that being skeptical, or maybe they're just too nice and they will say like your idea is the best. Your mom doesn't count. But I think like starting the validation journey and talking about your idea like as early as possible will allow you to iterate fast. And then if you be realistic with yourself, if you realize you've made a mistake, fix it as soon as possible. Because if you don't do that, maybe your competitors are iterating faster than you. And the startup world is an execution game.
Okay.
Maybe I would give like 2-3 quick advices. The first one that I mentioned before, is research before starting an idea. I think it's for me a wrong cliche saying that idea is worth $1. I don't think so. It worth way more than that, because the angle that you choose to execute on, the idea, the business, and the problem that you choose to pursue, it has a huge impact on your future now, in 5 years, in 10 years of the company. So I would do a lot of research about high-growing niches, high-growing markets, new trends. There's a lot of tools out there in the market, from analytics to Amazon and Google searches, that can prove that in a very analytical way.
This is what you learn in consultancy companies.
Exactly.
This is why we like Barkyn.
Exactly. The second one, I would say, maybe this is applicable for starting and even scaling. Prioritization is everything. I would invest a lot on a good criteria. It doesn't need to be a very sophisticated system, like a criteria to prioritize what we're working on, to make sure that the task that we are working on today is the next most impactful one towards the bigger mission, even on a very granular level. And if that criteria really thought through, that will create a lot of impact in a company and growth as well. And third, I would say invest in yourself, because you are your best asset and the best asset of your company, probably. So that means, on a practical level, learning aggressively at a very high pace, reading podcasts, doing courses, like everything is out there. Anything that you want to learn is on the web now. And also on your well-being, like nutrition, sleep,
having a pet,
exercise. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of difference, because if you are in good shape mentally and physically, I think things will go the right way.
Okay. Thank you, André. Thank you, Cristina. I think it was an amazing talk. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And as André said, if you want to learn, we have a bunch more episodes with great founders of the Portuguese entrepreneurial ecosystem. I invite you to watch them or to listen to them. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.